Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and for the next hour, I'd like to tell you more about my visual artwork and the process that I go through while making my visual artwork. So last night, I completed the final touches on a large 48 by 48 inch painting that I've been working on pretty much for the last year. So it's very much in my mind right now, and feels right for me to tell you a little bit more about what I do when I'm not flapping my moving mouth parts on the radio. Because I say, 6 days of the week, I'm an artist in the studio painting with my paintbrush, but 1 day of the week, I come on the radio and I paint a painting with my voice. Well, now I'd like to describe to you more about what these paintings are and why I do them. And you can look at the paintings if you go to the ucy.tv/FRL homepage for Birth of a New Dimension, this radio show, and go to the Twitter feed, which is all the way to the left of the screen and all the way down. And you should be able to click on several pictures that I've posted there, or you could just go directly to Twitter at Birth Dimension. Birth_dimension, where you will be able to actually see the things that I'm referring to with my voice. So when I speak here each week, I speak about concepts that are preparing human consciousness, Earth surface human consciousness, for multidimensional reality. And the artwork, the visual artwork that I make, is a similar expression of that multidimensional viewpoint and preparation of human perception in order to navigate the higher dimensional / multidimensional perspective. We are multidimensional beings right now. Even if you are unaware, you are still multidimensional. It's like you might have a limb, like a leg that you don't even know about, that is, quote unquote, under the table, kicking other people's legs, and it might be in your ignorance, but that doesn't mean you don't have a leg. So here the allegory of the leg is your higher dimensional aspects of self. These are non-physical aspects of self. They're not merely the emotions, they're also the energy presence, the consciousness, the awareness, literally the attention. Your attention is like a limb of the body that touches on other limbs and touches other people, and it functions through a higher dimensional space. Whether or not people are aware that their attention is reaching out from their individuated consciousness and touching other people, places, and things and having an effect and then reporting back, whether or not they are aware doesn't matter. They still have those aspects of anatomy. So a lot of what I paint are these aspects of anatomy. One painting in particular, Ascension 2012, contains very specific, calibrated anatomical depictions of the way that the physical form of the anthropomorphic body, one head, 2 arms, 2 legs in most cases, intertwines with and is interpenetrated by the non-physical aspects of the body, the layers of energy that we would call your chakras, or your energy body, or your auric field, or even your energy field around your body. And all of the waves that this energy field is comprised of are nested proportionally and harmonically. When I first started to express myself visually, and P.S., I'm a walk-in, in case you're new to my broadcasts, and I came into this human adult female body when the body was age 27, and almost immediately began expressing the cosmic abstract truths that I was exposed to through drawings. I was not articulate as I am now when I first came in. It took me many years to build the capacity to use words, to choose the right words, to have the right vocabulary, and to describe what I was perceiving with language. So please understand that about me. For me, language has been secondary, and visual artistry has been primary in terms of self-expression. In fact, when I first started to make these drawings in a more organized, formal way, I said that I was making drawings of the language of light. And that's because this body mostly had training about the visual arts. And so when abstract cosmic truth came through this body and this neurology and this filter, this human filter, it was primarily expressed as visual understanding. However, as the years went on and I began to explore more of the potential within this body and cultivate the senses more, I found that there was an untapped potential of understanding the world through sound and through music, and started to educate myself about music and to see the connections between the highly organized drawings of waveforms that I was creating as my visual art and what I was hearing with my ears and the expressions that I was making with my voice. Because I have done vocal overtones for many years. Since I first came into this body, I would tone and chant with my voice in a very free-form way. And eventually, in Woodstock, New York, where I lived for many years, I became connected to a group of overtones singers and, learned to do it much more and learned to cultivate myself much more. And eventually, I'm just giving you this very long story here, where I stand with this all now, I call it the vibratory language, because it is a language not only of light, it's also a language of sound. It's a language of vibration. And through the human filter, we perceive these abstract vibrations as visual arrangements, or as sound, as musical arrangements. What we are really referring to is an interdimensional cosmic language of harmonics. And harmonics, I define this as the nested and proportional nature of waveforms. And the thing that is a waveform, it can be light moving in a wave pattern. It can be sound moving in a wave pattern. So the circles that are in my paintings, these are visual depictions of these wave patterns. When you start to look at my paintings, you will start to notice that there are no straight lines. My paintings are comprised almost entirely of circles. Even in the painting called Vessel, which has in it the star tetrahedron, or Merkaba, or light body vessel shape, if you look extremely closely, you will see that the seemingly straight lines of the star tetrahedron are actually comprised of groupings of tiny, tiny, tiny little circles. And there's a reason for this. Really understanding that a straight line is drawn as an approximation, or the visual, quote-unquote, taking of the average of two curves. So if you could imagine two overlapping circles and then drawing a straight line that connects the 2 points of coincidence, what you are able to do is simplify and use a shorthand. It's kind of like saying this curve plus this curve equals this straight line. And people in this time and place are used to looking at all of the collapsed straight line versions of geometric forms, like a triangle or a square or a dodecahedron or a hexagon. But all of those shapes that are made out of straight lines have, as part of their birth process or their germination or their origin, circles. It all comes from circles. So one of the first things you can learn in terms of exploring, let's not call it geometry anymore, because the word geometry literally is ancient, and it comes from the time when humans had to learn how to evenly divide up and apportion their farmlands After the yearly flooding would obliterate the lines of their farm, they would have to somehow redraw those lines and make sure that everybody got a fair share of the communal field that they were helping to take care of. Geo means earth, and metric means to measure. Geometry, this is measuring earth. Literally, a system for measuring square footage on planet Earth. The paintings that I paint and what they depict and the concepts that we talk about here on this weekly radio broadcast are much more than about measuring mere physical space. We are now talking about developing a language or a lexicon for interdimensional experience, for having an experience and a perception and sharing that experience and perception and communicating it with not only other corporeal beings, but other non-corporeal beings. So in the same way that on Earth's surface, in human culture, there would be a language barrier between a person from an English-speaking world and, let's say, a person who speaks Chinese. However, math is an international language that both the English speaker and the Chinese speaker could find a way to communicate through 1 + 1 = 2, or math as a language. The language of vibration is a similar common ground or meeting place where beings who are corporeal and submerged in time can share ideas and perceptions and communicate effectively about their ideas and perceptions with beings whom have never had a body, whom have never been submerged in the physical realm or experienced time. They don't experience time like you and I. I wanted to say they don't get it, quote unquote. They do get it. They get it from a very different perspective. So these are beings that would not spend any amount of time measuring square footage of mud for food production. So geometry doesn't work as a word. I've come up with the description that is impeccable. I call it the interdimensional vibratory language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. Tone we would experience with our 5 senses as sound. And texture matters because when we are perceiving light or waveforms, light can be hard, light can be soft, light can be fuzzy, it can be sharp. Light can have many different qualities. Just saying something is a language of light is not descriptive enough. And when we call it a language of vibration, we then bring in the idea of time. Frequency involves time. How many wavelets pass a fixed point in an amount of time? So we need to develop effective tools for even speaking about what we're experiencing and sharing it with other beings of consciousness. When I first came into this physical body and I wasn't very articulate with language in English and human vernacular, I did tons and tons of drawings and simple watercolor paintings of these patterns that I was perceiving. And I also did it in order to learn about what is inside of myself better. Really, if you're an artist, and I say this to everyone who's an artist, what you're making, everything is a self-portrait. All of your projects are ways of putting what is inside of you, outside of you, externalizing what is internal so that you can look at it. And sometimes as an artist, you paint things or draw things or do things that you don't know why you're doing it. Like I'm picking up a purple pencil. Why does it have to be purple? I don't know. Let's just do it and find out. This is my particular approach to artistry and creation and self-knowledge through self-expression. So I started out just filling up reams and reams of paper and notebooks with these abstract line drawings. And eventually I realized that I was drawing what was inside of me, that these are all like I took the telescope of my attention and I turned it into a microscope. I turned it inward and I focused or attenuated my consciousness on what was inside of me. And when we do that, we find all of the answers are within, and the answers are structural. They are part of the way you are formed. So the paintings and drawings that I've been doing, these are idealized structures. They are non-physical anatomy of beings who have perfect anatomy. So when I draw the chakras, like in Ascension 2012, I have drawn beings that are perfected. It's like if I'm giving you an example of a guitar, I'm giving you a perfectly tuned guitar that's also pretty and shiny and, nice and looking good, as opposed to an old beaten up guitar that's out of tune and has a crooked neck and one of the strings doesn't really play. That guitar that I just described, that kind of instrument, is really much more in line with what we see around us in terms of human biology. This is not to be offensive to anyone, but is the understanding that there are very few perfectly tuned guitars, quote unquote, walking around. And mostly we have people that have chakras out of alignment, chakras that are not balanced and working together harmonically. And harmonic, let me describe this to you also. I'm using all these words, I should define terms. Harmonics means that the circles or the semicircles or the waveforms that nest within one another do so perfectly without any fractions, without anything hanging over the edge. So in my paintings, I have arbitrarily calibrated red and the representation of the red wavelength in the world as a 12-inch circle. I could have chosen any sized circle. I chose 12 because it would make it easier for me to divide it up into the other increments. The orange circle in all of my paintings is always going to be half of the size of the red circle. So if red is 12, orange circles are always going to be 6 inches, and the yellow circles are always going to be 4 inches. The green circles are always going to be 3 inches because they are 1/4 of 12. And then the light blue circles are 2.7 inches. The indigo circles are 2 inches. And the violet circles are all 1.7 inches. And I chose 12 inches very arbitrarily for my representation of the red realm. And I did so before I was even educated enough to understand the importance of the proportion 1 to 1.618. And in choosing 12 to calibrate my circles, made my violet circle a perfect 1.7. It's as if I've rounded up the 1.618. So, and 1 to 1.618, this is the proportion known as phi, P-H-I, the Greek letter from Phidias, the creator, designer of the Parthenon, a being who was infinitely aware of how important it is to have things in proportion, the importance of proportions. And this phi proportion is seen regularly throughout the Parthenon and is also seen regularly throughout the temple of your physical body. When you look at the proportions of your knuckle bones to larger knuckle bones, thigh bone to calf bone, your your large front tooth to your slightly smaller side tooth. These are all biological expressions of this mathematical formula, or seeing the perfection of math in the natural realm. Before I knew about any of that, because again, I'm here on a journey of learning. I did not come in with the knowledge of what phi is. I had already set up my paintings in this way of starting with red being the wavelength at 12 inches and violet at 1.7 inches. And so this is what I'm talking about. Like when we are artists, sometimes we do things that aren't immediately apparent. The motivations or the benefits are not immediately apparent. You do what feels right, and then later on, the conscious daily waking intellect catches up with you and says, this is why you did this. So this is why I do my paintings. My paintings are scholarly explorations for my own consciousness, and I wouldn't make them if they weren't interesting for me to make. That's one of my rules. I am my own boss in the studio. No one else is my external taskmaster. And if a project bores me, I literally cannot keep going with it. Either I have to find a way to make it interesting or I stop, because boredom is like my soul or my finest aspect of my consciousness saying, you could be doing more with your time. If I feel like, wow, this project is so boring, I really hate it, that is my inner aspect of self and my consciousness saying, you can be using your time and your body and your valuable submergence within the fourth dimension in a different way. So no toil and no drudgery. I'm very joyous in my studio. And people that have perceived me, neighbors and housemates, know I like to put on music. I like to dance joyously. I like to put on music that is inspiring and upbeat. I'm sure you can imagine not very much death metal in my studio. I like to listen to things like John Coltrane and Bach. And again, these are two musicians that I was unselfconsciously drawn to before I even found out about who they were and their own approach or connection to mathematics and patterns. I simply loved these two musicians, and I found that when I would put on their music, my artwork would flow more effortlessly, and my brain and mind and perception felt more happy and comfortable. I did one flying rainbow lasagna sculpture where my hands were always covered in plaster, and so I didn't want to always be touching the CDs that were in the player. I just put on the John Coltrane heavyweight box set and put it on random shuffle and just left it on, and that whole entire sculpture is just my brain being programmed with these wonderful John Coltrane patterns. And let's talk about this now, the connection between patterns and neurology. We define music as opposed to random sound as patterned sound. And I can even go into this a little bit, the idea of 432 hertz, that the frequency to which we tune our musical instruments, it is standardized. And since 1940 or so roughly, it's been standardized to 440 hertz as the A note. And that was something that was initiated by Nazi propagandists. And the point is, tuning the A note to 440 means that when we divide 440 in order to make the notes that are lower on the scale, just in the same way that I divide a 12-inch circle in two and make two 6-inch circles in my paintings, we do the same thing in sound waves. It's whatever, it's not a 12-inch sound wave, it might be a 12 nanometer sound wave. I haven't yet done the conversion between hertz and nanometers, so I don't have that information for you. But the idea is that you can look at my paintings and see them as literal representations of the compression of sound waves that we would define as music. So music, as opposed to random sound or static, music is waves that conform to the harmonic patterns. And that means that a note that is an A at 440 hertz, if we divided that in half, we would have an A at 220 hertz, right? And things only get sticky when we begin to divide and end up with endlessly repeating numbers or fractions. Things like 1/3 or 0.3 repeating or 2/3 or 0.6 repeating. These are evidences of not perfectly nested waveforms. the fractions tell us that there's a remainder. There's a little something hanging over the edge. Instead of, if you could envision a perfect circle with two perfect circles inside of it and nothing sneaking over the edge, imagine if there's two circles inside of it, but one of those circles is like a foot that hangs over the edge of the bed. Our ear can hear that, and it sounds not pretty. It sounds not in tune. It sounds not musical. So when we are exposed to waveforms that are conforming to this harmonic pattern of energy as it flows in the cosmos, not only do we define it as music, we say, ah, that's a beautiful musical sound, as opposed to, ah, that's the sound of a garbage truck. Those beautiful musical sounds also have a benevolent, positive, organizational impact on your cellular structure of your body. It feels good. It makes your cells healthy and happy. And it also helps your brain and your mind and your perception to be able to act more harmoniously, because Earth has a basic frequency. This is called the Schumann resonance. It is the frequency that is measured of energy bouncing between the surface of the Earth, like the ground where you plant your tomatoes, and the higher levels of Earth's atmosphere up above the stratosphere. Whenever there are lightning strikes on Earth, that is like ringing a bell. It's like, or striking a gong. And that gong is the planet, and it then reverberates. And the Schumann resonance is the tone at which it is reverberating. And it reverberates right now at 7.58 hertz. However, that's an old measurement. We now need to understand Earth is a process. She is constantly in flux. If there's more lightning strikes over the plains of Africa, the Schumann resonance changes. It fluctuates, goes up and down. And it has been steadily increasing within the past 100 years that, scientific instruments have been around to measure what has been going on. And yes, this is definitely concurrent with raising of the levels of consciousness that are available to Earth's surface humans. The magic number here is 8. If we round up 7.53 to 8, we then say that the frequency of the Schumann resonance and of planet Earth is roughly 8. And we want to be working with multiples of 8 that can then divide up into whole numbers or integers. Integers, it's a beautiful word to me, because when I paint my paintings, and if I have circles, and the circles touch each other perfectly, if they kiss, if their edges are tangential, but they don't actually overlap, it makes me happy. It's like puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly. And that's the visual representation of harmonic integers, like two 6-inch circles that nest perfectly within one 12-inch circle. When you listen to music that is tuned to 432 hertz, so 432 is a nice, lovely number that is a happy multiple of 8. We can divide it up into all these lovely fragments that are based in 8 without having any endlessly repeating numbers like 0.333 or 0.666. And when our ears hear 0.333 repeating, it sounds not that pretty. It sounds not in tune. So when we hear nested harmonic proportional sound waves, we label it as music. And it has a benevolent impact on our perception, our physical cellular structure, and our neurology. The two hemispheres of your brain, your physical organic computer, communicate very happily with one another at the frequency of 8 hertz. Imagine, two musicians that are in tune because they're sending energy back and forth according to frequencies that are in multiples of 8. Because you're within a larger symphony. This is birth of a new dimension, and I bring this message all the time. The idea that you are consciousness and you're a little piece of individuated vibration. You're a musician and you're submerged within a symphony. Many, many other consciousnesses who are also vibrating and who are also affecting you. You are affecting them, they're affecting you. And these are non-physical vibrations. My voice is a physical vibration. You hear it with your physical ears. My feeling of who I am is a non-physical vibration. If you were simply sitting in a chair in the same room as me and I wasn't flapping my moving mouth parts, you would be feeling my vibration, even though you wouldn't be feeling the physical vibration of me moving the atmosphere with my larynx, okay? So we're talking about being submerged within a symphony of non-physical vibrations. They're consciousness, they're also emotion, they're also genetic or based in DNA. But it's not only the vibration of DNA. You're like a stringed instrument, a viola, strung with catgut. However, there's minerals that are vibrating. Quartz vibrates, moldavite vibrates, iron vibrates, and those vibrations are also part of consciousness. So do not be so anthropocentric as to only think that musicians are DNA-based organisms. Of course not. The vibrations are also planetary. The planet is not even the conductor. The planet is simply a very large, very well-practiced musician who is also playing her song. And when we tune our brains to 8 hertz and tune our music to 432 hertz, we are in tune with the planet upon which we stand. So understand that for, the past 75 years or so, humanity and the music that humans have been creating on Earth's surface has been slightly out of tune. And it's been intentional, and it's been made in order to cause a slight cognitive dissonance. And, the upshoot of all of this is because even though efforts were made to reduce human consciousness, look at what happened post-World War II in the realm of music. Pop music became evident. It turned into rock and roll music, and rock and roll music became a tool for self-expression as opposed to a tool for consciousness reduction. So music was intended to be out of tune and make you less conscious. However, music ended up being a tool for social reform. There's the protest movement. There was the psychedelic revolution, that even though music was slightly out of tune, it's like even if you plant a seed in soil that is not that great soil, it's still going to grow. The life force is still so powerful and undeniable. So the force for consciousness and awareness to grow is so powerful and so undeniable that even when music was intentionally changed to be out of tune and make its listeners slightly out of tune, it ended up having a unifying effect. Now that we are aware of this, we can change. We can retune our entire symphonic world to 432 hertz. There's a movement to do this. Of course, there's great controversy because not everybody agrees that the A note should be 432. Some people feel that it should be 444, and there are many schools of thought. I won't get into it. Now, many people know and understand that music can be healing. The Tibetan singing bowls and chimes have been used in the Far East for a very long time in order to uplift people's energy, their emotions, their spirituality, and only in the past, let's say 25 years, has sound therapy in the West, Western industrialized nations, been even considered as a valid, having a valid impact on the cellular structure of the body. I've seen amazing before and after photographs of red blood cells, and the patient had something like sickle cell anemia. It was a disease that caused malformation of the red blood cells. And after a sound bath, being exposed to the harmonic vibrations of Tibetan singing bowls or the Tibetan chimes, the red blood cells were differently shaped, and they were perfectly shaped. And this is what we understand about waves. Waves can affect matter. disharmonious waves can have a negative effect on cellular structure. There's tons of apocryphal evidence, personal experience evidence, evidence that has been gleaned through people's personal experience is what I'm trying to say, of the radiation emitted from cell phones and smart meters causing cellular damage or cancerous tumors in humans. So we can certainly see that there can be a negative impact when chaotic waves are beamed at cellular life. There's also some good basic science experiment, like high school level science experiment stuff, of people trying to germinate seeds on top of a Wi-Fi router and finding that the field surrounding the router is too disruptive to the life force energy of the tiny seeds that are trying to germinate for them to germinate effectively. So this is the understanding that what you are marinating in, the landscape of vibration that is all around you, can certainly have a negative impact on your cellular structure. Well, the opposite is also true, that a well-organized field around you can have a positive impact on your cellular structure. Looking at my paintings can also have a positive impact on your cellular structure. This is the understanding that the information you are receiving visually, waves that are coming in through your eyes, can also have an uplifting or healing effect on the body, or let's say they can help to tune your instrument. How do we tune an out-of-tune instrument? And the answer is by putting the right energy into the instrument in the right places and in the right way. So on a cellular level, it is wonderful to be exposed to either sound frequency tuning forks or Tibetan healing bowls or even crystal singing bowls. And the most effective thing to do is to bathe yourself in the sound. Make it a sound that is in the room with you, as opposed to merely listening to it on headphones where you're only vibrating the tiny ears inside of your cochlea. If that's all you can do, like if you need quiet, if you don't want to wake the baby, or you're someplace where you can't just have giant Tibetan bells ringing all the time, headphones are absolutely beneficial. It's best to give that energy to your whole body. This is also the power of our voice. So I told you, years ago I was doing informal, untrained vocal harmonic overtones. And I learned to train my voice to do them more and more. And now I have learned that that has a beneficial effect on my body, on my cat's body, on the living creatures that surround me when I sing those overtones with my voice. So I'm putting benevolent vibrations into the non-physical atmosphere with my emotions and with my genetic flying rainbow lasagna dancing. And with the physical realm, I am intentionally programming my voice to send out these uplifting, harmonically shaped waveforms. And this matters because all the time on Earth's surface right now, humans use their voices without understanding the power of the voice. You're literally vibrating the atmosphere with your voice. So whatever you are saying, you are putting into the atmosphere. And whatever your truth is that you are saying, like if you say to the cosmos, quote unquote, I'm no good, I'll never succeed, you are vibrating the atmosphere with those waveforms, and they emanate outward from you. And you are similarly, you are also, if you say, quote unquote, I am a great person, my success is inevitable, you are vibrating the atmosphere with those waveforms and sending out that very real, very tangible vibration of the atmosphere. So this is the understanding that sound, or what we perceive with our five senses as sound, and also light, or our visual expression are part of this harmonic vibratory language. Harmonic, this is this pattern that I have been telling you about for more than a year. On these broadcasts, that is. We're up to episode 54. That's clearly more than a year's worth of recording, so that's pretty exciting. Life is when we, as cellular structures and consciousness, conform to the harmonic pattern of energy that is flowing in the cosmos. So this is not only shaping your body and your cells in the right way, it's also having the correct thoughts within a correct neurological structure, and the trajectory of your consciousness through time is also conforming to these harmonic patterns. It means you're occupying the right timelines, engaging in the right behaviors or physical expressions, moving your arms and legs in the right way, and also thinking the right thoughts, and also having your energy patterns in the right patterns. When we are doing that, we are literally achieving immortality. That is being in alignment with the path of least likelihood, the path that is your core self, and the path that emanates from the source and returns to the source without any loss or entropy. That's when I'm painting in Ascension 2012, it is the perfect anatomy of those people. That's why they are ascending, or the process of ascension is the process of this whole entire symphony finally getting in tune. Because amazing things start to happen when all of these waves that are in tune come together. This is also part of the magic of harmony, or the harmonic structure. That, well, you know something? Hold on a minute. I'm sitting here literally right next to my friend's collection of Tibetan singing bowls that she has loaned to me, and it's way easier for me to just give an example. So hold on while I set this up. So this is the idea that when we create harmonic waveform structures, those waveforms add up and they start to make amplified, I'm just moving things around here a little bit, they start to make amplified notes. I'm going to start playing this crystal bowl over here. This is nicknamed George by my friend. And when you hear the sound that goes wah, 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 you will know that you are hearing overtones, and you can visualize those as circles that overlap with other circles in such a perfect way that it makes the sound get louder. Okay, so let's do a little bit of this and move things aside here in a proper way, okay? So I hope that the microphone picked that up and that there wasn't too much reverberation or distortion, and that you were able to hear those sounds, because those are overtones. This is the magic of playing this instrument correctly. When you play it correctly, it doesn't just make one note, which in this lexicon would be called the fundamental note. It makes that primary note, and then within that note, many sub-notes, the overtones. These are like the tinier, smaller circles that are drawn within the larger giant circle. And when the circles are all the right size or frequency, they add up and they get louder. And that's what you hear, that oscillation, wah, wah, wah. The louder part of that oscillation is where all of the waves or circles are overlapping together perfectly. This is very much like consciousness on Earth and the planet and our solar system and the galaxy. Right now, what we have had up until this point for about the past 10 or 12,000 years is humans on Earth being out of tune, and playing their own cobbled together musical score without really being able to hear the rest of the musicians or perceive the conductor of consciousness. And humans are now just starting to become aware, first of all, you have an instrument. Your body is your instrument, and your body is not just defined here as your physical cells. It is the totality of who you are, your physicality and your emotions and your mind and your heart and your perception and your connection to the divine. That is your body. So not only has the human body been out of tune with the cosmos, it's been out of tune with the planet, humans have been out of tune with one another and with the natural world that surrounds them. It is like saying that the instruments have not been making waveforms that nest together and create these beautiful overtone harmonic structures. What's more apt would be to describe it as not even chaos, but waveforms that cancel each other out or delete the energy. Because if you, like Bose headphones, the noise cancellation headphones that you can buy for hundreds of dollars and wear on an airplane or in a car so that you don't hear that loud engine roar. The way that those headphones work is they measure whatever sound wave is coming in, and they give the exact equal opposite in order to create that sound wave as a neutral, as a nothing. And this is what has been happening for a very long time, that there has been a disruption in the capacity of the human consciousness and imagination network on Earth to express itself effectively. This is called human society doesn't work. Do you understand? Human consciousness makes up society, and society, as it has been going on for the past 10 or 12,000 years, is out of tune. It doesn't work. Or we could say that it is corrupt. So many questions. How do we get human society back in tune? And the short story for that is get each individual human to reconnect to the source or higher consciousness through their own innate divine connection. That is what really caused all of these musicians and instruments to go out of tune in the first place. So that's like the primary trauma. If we heal that trauma, then we can return everyone to being in tune and to a happy harmonic structure. What I perceive happening is little by little, like it is not happening as a collective, individuals are changing their tune, and those individuals are affecting a group of individuals, but not necessarily all individuals on the planet. And when enough people who are in tune instruments are affecting enough people around them that are out of tune instruments, then you will begin to get these harmonic structures. So here's an example of harmonic structures changing. Charles Eisenstein, excellent economist. He has written a book called Sacred Economics. I think it's freely available on the internet. And I think there's also some good videos on YouTube where he explains his ideas. And this is the idea of basically how to restructure our economy, how to restructure society. Because society, the way it is run, and the economy, the way it is run, does not express the harmonic perfection of the patterns of consciousness in the cosmos. And if it did, we would live in the most beautiful, abundant, perfectly formed and artistically created society. We don't. We live in a barbaric society, and the economy does not even function, I would say. So if we structured our economy according to this harmonic pattern of energy as it flows in the cosmos, it would be more akin to a beautiful ecosystem, where each organism plays its role and each organism gets the nutrients that it needs to sustain itself. So this is also the idea of Michael Tellinger's work, the Ubuntu movement. Ubuntu is an African word that means what is good for all. It's also a free open source software code, which also expresses this idea of moving away from proprietary ownership and profit-driven capitalism towards collaboration and sharing openly with others. The Ubuntu movement is the idea of changing our whole political and social and economic structure so that people only would work maybe 4 hours a week in terms of making a contribution to society, and yet we would all still have a home, electricity, food. It's basically a way of restructuring what is given to society and what is given to yourself, and a healthier creation of boundaries. This is what I'm talking about. Retuning the individual instruments of human consciousness on Earth, and how when we do that, we act together as a concert or as a whole differently and in a better way. So I've seen the effect that it can have when people are exposed to benevolent sounds, and definitely when people look at my artwork or other similar organized imagery that represents these harmonic patterns. This is why the art that is in cathedrals, like rose windows, the architecture of cathedrals, the way that they're shaped and their ceilings, all of these visual cues exist in order to have an impact of essentially tuning your instrument. And tuning in this case would be towards higher consciousness, or a greater level of organization, or greater levels of awareness and understanding. The idea is we can certainly expose people to chaotic visual information, and that makes it more difficult to think clearly, or we can expose people to highly organized visual information, and this can actually help people to think more clearly. So when I would listen to the music of Bach while I'm doing my paintings, and I would feel like, wow, my mind feels so clear and my emotions feel so happy, calm, and peaceful. The reason for that, I now understand, is that the music of Bach is patterned like math, like these harmonic proportions. And when my neurology hears that, my neurology doesn't have to account for the cognitive dissonance of circles that don't fit together perfectly. And when people look at my artwork or similarly organized, perfect symmetrical structures, it helps to tune you up inside. It helps you to no longer have to be fighting against the chaos or lack of organization. You can actually perceive something that is maybe even more highly organized than you and gain organization from it. And literally, I have had people come into my studio, and one person, a man, looked at my artwork and he started to tear up and cry. It had a profound emotional impact on him. This is a picture of circles. How can circles have such a deep emotional impact? And the answer is, through his visual field, it was changing the format of his chakras. It was changing the format of his consciousness as he is going on his trajectory through time. He changed the direction in which his consciousness was traveling by looking at a painting. And of course, we can do this in the opposite direction. If I show you a picture, like on Facebook, there are plenty of pictures of, dead, murdered people, refugees, very disturbing photos. Yes, we can bring down a person's energy. We can make their energy go out of tune very easily. Hey, here's another way to make your energy go out of tune almost instantaneously. Turn on the television. Even if the television is, supposedly broadcasting really uplifting things, just the vibration that it emits is disruptive to your higher consciousness and to your non-physical energy centers. I watch so little TV, and really for that reason. And once you add in things like commercials, advertising, that is all disruptive. Going to a major city like New York City, it's full of commercial advertising. It's full of things that are disruptive to the visual field. Unless one's energetic structure is very strong, it's easy to have all of those things come in and have a negative impact. Or going to someplace like giant box store like Walmart or something like that. If you don't have a good sense of coherence in your inner organization, being exposed to all of this chaos in the visual field, and it's perceived as socially acceptable chaos. Advertising is socially acceptable. Marketing is socially acceptable. Stacking up, a pyramid of merchandise so that it is eye-catching is considered to be good marketing for a store. However, what that is making you slightly out of tune. It's another really great way to get in tune. Go into a place of nature, like walk in the woods, or go to a garden, or even if the weather's not good, if you have a house plant inside, look at the formation of the house plant. Really, this is reconnecting to that beautiful harmonic proportion named after Phidias, Phi. If you look at the center of a sunflower, this literally, why do we find flowers beautiful? Because the folding pattern of petals must be harmonically perfect in order for them to unfold out of the flower bud. There's perfect, we would call it geometry if we were using our old language for this, but there's perfect vibratory frequency programmed into every flower so that it will unfold, just like you have to pack a parachute properly so that it will open at the moment when you're jumping out of the plane. Those flowers are uplifting to you and your emotions and your inner mental state because you perceive the perfection of how it had to be folded for it to unfold. So I think you're starting to sense my agenda here. We need a lot less city, or if you're going to have city, we need to have it be a lot more consciously designed. We need to have our cities structured harmonically. For me to go to New York or to go to San Francisco, it is literally unpleasant. It is very uncomfortable. And I'm not just talking about the uncontrolled mental or consciousness or psychic vibrations. I am also talking about the discomfort of a place that is not shaped right and things that don't look right. Let's contrast this with, let's say, the area of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, in ancient Egypt. That area was designed for grandeur, for splendor, like a cathedral is designed in this way. Oh, it's the end of our hour. I hope that this broadcast has prepared you for the birth of a new dimension. The labor is ongoing. The baby is coming. We are going to have a wonderful new dimension. Thank you for joining me for it.